mechanisms in this live stream, so feel free to leave your comments, feel free to let me know what you think. I've also just gone live on my Facebook page, Marianne Hanson Counselling Service, so you can watch the exact same live stream there. Sometimes it's slightly different because I'm sort of, adding bits here and there. But defense mechanisms, I'm just going to give you the description that I've got. I got this probably offline or from a book. A defense mechanism is an unconscious psychological strategy that is used to protect a person from anxiety and distressing thoughts or emotions. These strategies originate from psychoanalytical theory, and they can distort or deny reality so that the person can manage internal conflict and maintain self-esteem. So all that really means in layman's terms is these defense mechanisms that you put up are because you're fearful of something or that you want to protect something. So whether that's to do with you want to protect your feelings, so you feel that you're going to get rejected or hurt, or someone's going to say something to you that is going to really impact on you, so you have a defense mechanism, or you want to protect yourself from a distressing or anxious situation. So a good example could be someone who has social anxiety, and in fact, when I talk about the defense mechanisms, I'll give you examples as we go along. So as we said, defense mechanisms, majority of the time, or actually all of the time, they're unconscious, so we're not always aware of them. I think in some cases you are aware that you're being defensive or you're putting up defenses, because people might say it. So they might say, I don't want to be hurt anymore. I've been hurt in a lot of my relationships, so therefore I'm going to protect myself. So I'm not going to tell someone that I love them. I'm not going to show emotions too much, or I'm going to act in a different way. So if someone says that, they're aware that they have defense mechanisms, but they're not ready to put them down. They're not, sometimes you'll hear people say, my defenses are up, or I'm guarded, or I'm not ready to let my defenses down. So a person like that is usually aware of them. The majority of people are not aware because it's an unconscious thing. So I'm going to talk about a few defense mechanisms that give you a good idea of what they are, and then at the end I'm going to sort of give you some tips on how you can work with these. So defense mechanisms are unconscious. As I've said, they operate automatically and without conscious awareness. So there are protective defense mechanisms which aim to reduce anxiety and to protect your self-esteem. So they make overwhelming or threatening situations more bearable. So if you are in protective mode, what it's really it's not protective mode in the same way as, you're walking down a street and it's late at night and you have to be aware of your surroundings and you're worried that something could happen because of that situation. That is normal protective mode. A defense mechanism protective mode is an assumed danger. So you're protecting yourself from something which is actually not really dangerous, but your mind is saying to you that it is. So a good example of that, as I've said before, is if you've got social anxiety, your main issue is that you fear being around people in social situations because of things that you've told yourself. There's no evidence that if you go to the party that everyone's going to laugh at you because you've got nothing to say. There's no evidence to say that if you turn up at this festival that you're going to dry up and you're going to be have a panic attack. So social anxiety is giving yourself stories that haven't happened, but it's the way that you're saying to yourself it's dangerous. So in those situations, you'd protect yourself by not going. You'd protect yourself by going but turning up for 5 minutes and then leaving. So protective defense mechanisms are really there to reduce the anxiety, and to protect your self-esteem. So rather than you then turning up at the party, if you don't go, it means that no one's going to laugh at you, and so you've already got yourself out of that. If you don't go, then your anxiety levels are not going to rise. And I think the thing with anxiety, out of everything, is that because it's always perceived, it's never actually, and it's not to say that people don't get anxious, because everyone gets anxious to some level at some certain times, but with defense mechanisms come a lot into it with anxiety, because you've already told yourself that something bad is going to happen, that something negative is going to happen. So therefore it's easy for you to then put these defense mechanisms in place. You say, okay, well, this person's going to reject me, so I'm not going on the date. this I'm going to fail the exam, so I'm not going to the exam. I'm going to look stupid at the party, so I'll just not go. So you've already told yourself that. So another thing about defense mechanisms is that they distort reality. So they involve some form of self-deception to change one's perception of reality. So what it's effectively saying is that the reality of the situation most of the time is not it's not true, but the person has had to distort reality in order for it to fit the narrative for them. So if you're quite a defended and guarded person, you can live your life in that way by telling yourself lots of untruths which are not even fact, but they're going to keep you where you want to be. So you could tell yourself that it's good to be isolated and to not be around people, because if you go on TikTok is a good example, any social media, you'll have people that have told themselves things, all men are dangerous, people are, I'm not a people person, I don't need to interact with people, getting a job is just being a slave, being in a relationship is just for stupid people, or whatever it is. People have told themselves these stories so that they can distort reality, so that they can stay in a place which is comfortable for them. And it works, because then you have millions of people that are saying the same thing, that they don't really believe it, but it keeps them safe. Because if as human beings, it's not, none of the stuff that they're saying fits with human nature, fits with how we function as people. We like being around people. We like interacting with strangers. We like being in relationships. We like having structure to our day. We like having a purpose. We like having money from, doing work and then being paid. All of those things, and I'm saying overall, I'm not saying everyone, the majority of people, that's what keeps us going as human beings. But when you distort reality, you're saying like the opposite. You're saying things, but you're keeping yourself in a place which is not really where you want to be. So here are some common defense mechanisms that people hold. The first one is repression. Repression is pushing unwanted thoughts or feelings or memories out of your conscious mind. And all that really means is that if you have a fantasy or a feeling or a desire and you feel that it won't be accepted in society, or it won't be accepted by your partner, or you will be laughed at, or you'll be viewed as weird or strange or whatever it is, you repress it. So you repress that part of yourself so that other people can see a different side of yourself. So what then happens is, if you keep repressing certain things, it can either come out in the wrong way. So if you have certain desires or fantasies and then they're not being, you're not able to fulfill them, you might do something different. So I spoke about it in the other video. Say if you have, your sexuality is part of it, but you know that within your community or within your religion or within your society, being gay is not accepted. You'll repress that side of yourself when that is really who you want to be. You may do things like go to gay bars but keep that secret. You may get married and have children and try to live a life of a straight person, heterosexual person. But then what will happen is you're constantly repressing who you really are. So it's going to come out in some ways, and that will either be eventually it will be too much for you and you'll need to leave that marriage and then go into your gay relationship, or you may take on relationships and cheat while you're in the marriage. So repression doesn't work, because it's like you're trying to push something down. It's like you're always trying to force something, but it comes out. It can't be forced. You can't repress it to the level that it needs to be. So that's like repression. The next one is projection. So projection is attributing one's own unacceptable thoughts or feelings to another person. So you feel something within yourself. A good example would be someone who is angry all the time, or just someone who is lazy, or someone who is whatever it is that they are. They don't want to believe that that's who they are. So they're pointing that towards another person. I'm not lazy, you're the one that's lazy. I'm not the one that is angry, you're angry. Or, and then they'll try to come up with narratives to prove their point that it's another person, but really it's them. And all you really need to do when you're projecting is really look back at yourself and say, well, this is me, this is who I am. It's owning it, accepting it. But projection is just easy to do. So you're the one that doesn't do any work. You might say that to a colleague when really it's you that hasn't been doing the work. But you can't acknowledge that or admit that to yourself. So projection is similar to displacement. Some of these sort of link in with each other in a different way. So displacement is redirecting your emotions from their original source to a substitute, less threatening target. So back to work again, because this comes up a lot for people. So you're in a stressful environment, you're working with a boss who you feel is unreasonable, but you know that if you said to your boss, you're being unreasonable here, I don't like the way you're treating me, I don't like the fact that you're giving me all this work. The fear is you would lose your job. So rather than doing that, you tolerate that behaviour, but then when you get home, you displace the emotions that you feel. So the anger, the resentment and all that goes towards your wife or your partner, goes towards your children, goes towards your mother-in-law. Thanks for joining, whoever joined. So displacement just means that you hold a certain emotion, but you can't say it to the person who, is impacting you. So you displace the emotion onto someone else who has nothing to do with it. So a good example would be the person who's angry. Maybe they've played a game of football and they get really angry on the pitch and then they get sent off for their behaviour. So they can't do anything about it. The game's over, the referee's done that. But then when they're in the car, they're screaming at someone out the window randomly. And that person is like, what's going on here? Why is this person so angry? Well, they've displaced that emotion because there's nowhere for it to go. So they feel like the only way for it to go is to shout at another person. And the worst thing about it is when you displace your emotion, it's only temporary because it goes to another person or another thing, but you still feel it, it comes back because you haven't really dealt with it. It's similar to bereavement, when someone's grieving but they don't want to give themselves time to grieve, when they don't want to cry, they say, I can't cry, I can't break down, I need to go to work, I need to carry on as normal, but they're not functioning as normal. So because they're not giving themselves space and time to grieve, they're displacing that emotion somewhere else and it will come out in their work. Maybe they'll forget to do certain things, maybe they'll make mistakes. So yeah, you can't really, it's a temporary thing to displace your emotions. So another defense mechanism is rationalization. That's a hard one to say. And that is creating logical but false reasons to justify a behavior or outcome. So rationalization can also be called justification. So what that can mean is when someone does something wrong, instead of them turning inwards and saying, cheating is a good example. Someone cheats and they will say anything except for hold their hands up in a lot of cases and just say it was me who did that, it was me who chose to cheat with that person, it was me who decided to ask for that person's number, it was me who decided to do this. Because for some people, it's the fear of saying that out loud. They're so fearful of what that will then mean for their relationship. They're so fearful of what that will mean for their reputation. People will then look at them and think, oh, why are you so open about the fact that you did something wrong? So what they do instead is they'll rationalise. They'll say, well, the reason I cheated is because this person came on to me. The reason I cheated is because we were in a bad place. The reason I cheated is because I was drunk. They'll use all sorts of things to justify the behaviour, when really, if they just said, the reason I cheated is because I was lonely and I just saw someone across the bar and I just felt like doing it, it would, you could then have your couples counselling, you could then have your move forward in your relationship. But the problem is, it's too risky for people because they don't know that if they say that, is the partner then going to say, I don't want anything to do with you? But by trying to rationalise and give 100 reasons of why you've done something, only takes you further away from getting what you need. Because the point is, your partner can then think, well, what about next time that you're drunk? Or what about next time that this happens? Whereas if you just said, it's me, it was on me, and I'm telling you that I won't do this again because I trust that I know myself enough, that gives you more of a guarantee. And that's why people sometimes struggle with trust issues, because the person can't really say why they did what they did. They just keep rationalizing with different things. And it happens with lots of other situations as well. You know, if someone fails an exam, they might make reasons for that. There's so many times where people are rationalizing when really you don't need all of those words, you don't need to say all of those things, you don't need to give all of those reasons. You can just say, this didn't work out, or this is on me. I take full responsibility for this, and this is what I'm going to do about it. So the final one, and there's loads of other defense mechanisms. I mean, there's hundreds, but these are some of the common ones. And the final one I'm going to talk about is called reaction formation. This is behaving in a way that is the direct opposite of your true feelings. So this can happen in families, in relationships, in any situation. And that is when you are feeling a certain emotion, but you feel that either you're going to be judged if you, feel sensitivity towards something, or empathy, or you feel sad, or you just feel that you don't want to display that emotion for whatever reason. So instead you do the opposite. So it's like when people are sad and then they start crying. They're sad. Instead of crying, they actually start laughing. Or if people are upset, and instead of being upset, they just blow it off. They just act nonchalant about it. Or there's loads of situations where people, in therapy we see a lot, where someone might be talking about something really traumatic, but their defense mechanism says, I don't want to cry here, and I don't want to go to this level. So they just minimize it, or they start smiling, and then so the counsellor will pick up on that as body language and say, I'm noticing you're talking about something really traumatic there, but your body language is, different. And they will help the client see that, the client might say, that's what I always do. Every time I feel nervous, I start laughing. Or every time something's uncomfortable, I do this. And then you can work with that. So the whole point with defense mechanisms is, because they're unconscious in most cases, when you work with the therapist will help you to unlock why they're there, what are the origins of these defense mechanisms, but also to talk to you and explore with you what you can do about these defense mechanisms, because even though they're unconsciously there, you can choose slowly to let them down, let your guard down. There's lots of people which will say, my guard is up and I'm not putting it down because I don't want that to happen to me again. Or I've got my defenses up because of this or because of that. And you can explore that with a therapist, but it's almost like you don't have to be completely guarded as a human being, but also you don't have to be completely open to allow people to take advantage of you, or to, you want to be guarded and protected to a certain level, but you don't want it to take over your life, because if you have too many defense mechanisms, you can't function as a human being. And we're not born to be like that. We're not born to be defended, completely protected, never stepping out of our comfort zone, never experiencing risk, never doing anything that, might be good for us. We take chances and opportunities. So reducing some of these defense mechanisms is always a good idea. So I hope everyone enjoyed this live stream, and if you did, feel free to leave a comment, share it with others if you think someone else might find it interesting, and thank you for watching. I'm also going to leave in the comments where you can find me on my other social media in case you want to check that out as well. So thanks for watching.